now that your friends are gone.
Welcome back to another fucking writing podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Dempsey. I was thinking today, I've thought about this multiple times, but I was thinking about it today. When I was growing up, this is not that long ago. I'm not that old. I'm middle-aged. So this is in the early 2000s. It was still such that media, music, books, anything, it was a component within the lives of everyone in your community. And I mean, not that doesn't exist today. Everybody's still listening to music, reading books, but it's not the same music and books. I can envision a year where, I know that I would go home and the first thing I would do was the same thing that every other kid was doing when they first got home, which was turning on MTV, and it was like clockwork. Gangster's Paradise, or Nelly, or whatever the jam, the bop of the time. And you would on recess the next day, people are humming it. It's affecting all of us at the same time. Art undoubtedly affects our evolution. It changes history. It changes the collective consciousness. And we used to be moving all as one to a degree. And anymore, that's just not true. Everyone, it's more likely that the shit you're listening to and really, really being changed by, nobody else is listening to. Nobody, at least in your vicinity. Maybe you trade playlists through DMs. I don't know what people are doing, but we're no longer simultaneously grooving together. I know this has happened in various degrees over time. There was a point where, and I love hip hop music. If you know me at all, you know that I listen almost exclusively to rap and hip hop. And I love it because it was at its roots an attack against music being limited to only a few people because of money, right? And there was a riot in New York. People were breaking windows and going and stealing turntables and mixing boards. And overnight, suddenly hip hop was flooded with tons of new names and energies. And I'm sure there were people at that time going, "Oh my God, there's too much. I can't even keep up." I remember hearing a fact sometime. I don't remember it closely enough to know the exact, we'll call it 2020. Over 1 million books were published in a single year. That number's probably higher now. If you were reading nonstop 16 hours a day for the rest of your life, you couldn't read every book that was published in 1 year. Isn't that depressing? I can't be the only one that thinks that's depressing. And I don't know. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing either, that we have all of these options. I think it's wonderful. We can geek out and we can rabbit hole into our own niche and be constantly inundated and fulfilled by whatever kooky shit we want to be reading or listening to. But man, it really feels like there's something lost, that you can't go to your neighbor or a friend and be certain that they will know about the art you are consuming. Because it's ultimately about connection, right? That's what all art is striving for. And there used to be that greater connection that was always going on, and we were all evolving together. And now I can't even fucking, almost everything has to be curated anymore. If you want to start listening to certain podcasts, or you're looking for a series to binge, what do? You go onto Google, top 10 Netflix series, enter, and somebody has put in the work, and they know about their SEOs, and they've hacked Google, and they come up at the top of the list, and now that's what large quantities of people are being affected by. There's almost like a need for curation across the board. There's just too much. There's too much to wade through for anybody. We're too busy. But I miss the community. I'm sorry, I do. And I almost feel like there needs to be like local efforts being put out, you know? Wouldn't it be great if like a few of your friends who were kind of into cool shit would make a radio station and you could push a button on your way to work and you could consume freely this beautiful music or riotous music, whatever your bag is. And then you could go talk to them about it in person, face to face. You could be moved. You could all share your opinions and feelings about it. Doesn't happen anymore. Today on the podcast, I talked to Alan ten-Hoeve. Alan is the author of Notes from a Wood-Paneled Basement, out with Gobpile Press. We're press buddies. I love Alan. I really do. I love his writing. If you haven't read this book, oh, shame on you. That's what I feel. Shame on you. You should be ashamed. Go pick it up. Right after you listen to this talk.
I'm like a year or two younger than Bram. And I remember when my high school got its first real computer. It was just in the library.
Yeah, I actually remember that moment too. But I think you're maybe a little bit older than I am.
Yeah, 45.
Yeah, you are a little bit. I'm 37. So you said, did you have the day off or?
Yeah, I work for a couple of private schools and they're on break right now. Yeah, it's weird because I don't know what to do with myself without the routines. One school's pretty routine. The other one I'm like kind of on call for medical drives. So
okay.
Sometimes I might not do that for days on end, and then all of a sudden I'm packed for days. So you drive bus for private schools? Is that true? Yeah. Like whatever, I'll drive whatever.
Okay. Do you have like a CDL or? No,
it's just like the toaster buses.
Okay. Yeah.
Short buses.
Yep.
There's not enough kids really to warrant anything bigger. So yeah, that's what I do. It's for one of the schools. It's like a scholarship program where they have me bus in kids from the city that normally can't afford to go. Yeah, that's what I do. I take them to and from school. I'm also a substitute there, so sometimes I get to have classes.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't.
What grades do you sub?
Middle school. So yeah, it was weird. One day, I had chaperoned a 3-day, 4-night camping trip with the middle school kids. And then a little while after that, the head of school came to me and said my name got brought up to be a sub.
Me?
Yeah, and I wanted to be like, you're crazy.
You'd never taught before.
No. I have kids, so I guess maybe that helped a little bit. But I didn't. I just said yes. Like I'm trying to not say no to things now. Things that I get paid for, at least.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And I actually, it's not like a sub's job is the same as a teacher's, but I find that I'm liking it. So, and now I'm kind of. It's like I'm hoping a teacher falls ill. So.
Right, yeah, it just falls to the wayside and you slide right in.
Sounds evil, but... Yeah,
a little bit. No, so have you been doing this then kind of like since COVID? Is it a somewhat recent gig or have you been doing this for a while?
It's just that this school year, things were pretty unstable for a long time. So I'm really glad to have this. I just walked in and talked to a lady that I knew that worked there and said, I'm looking, I think this is a decent school. I'm looking for steady work. If you have anything ever, pops up, let me know. And she was right there. She was like, well, as it turns out, we need a driver for the scholarship program. I was like,
I'll do anything.
I couldn't believe, my luck that day. So
Yeah, like I didn't expect to walk out with a gig. You said like you were kind of feeling lost with no like schedule or routine currently.
yeah,
Even though like with the bus stuff and subbing is also not necessarily steady all the time either. Has it still
No.
been a pretty good move overall for like mental health and just how are you feeling right now?
Yeah, it's been a good move for mental health. I think that's why I need the routine. Like today, for instance, it was like one of those days where you kind of fall into a pit.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself laying around, not feeling good. I think I'm prone to those dark moods.
Yeah.
I got hard stuff going on in life right now, so it's kind of hard to keep my mind distracted. Writing has kind of dried up for the time being, so I don't really know what to do with myself on these days.
Yeah. I wondered if like, does it seem like when you're busy and steady in a routine, it's easier to pile more and more work and be productive? And then when nothing's happening, you kind of like wallow a little bit. That might not be the perfect word for it, but
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll think. I didn't realize one of the schools was also going on break. I do have a little bit of trouble juggling the 3 different roles I'm playing. So my memory is not great. I think you might know that I smoked pot for a long, long time. That probably didn't help.
yeah.
And I didn't realize they were on spring break at the same time. So I thought I was just going to fill up my schedule with medical drives. And then I went to book myself some drives and I saw the whole, the same time period empty. And I was like, oh my God, there's nothing going on.
Son of a bitch. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, that's all right. I'm just going to read a lot or something. And then I sit down to like read and the dark, moods just descend.
Like a cloud. Yeah.
I read like 2 pages and then I'm like curled up on the couch. Like, why this? Why that?
Why? Well, man, I have to first off say like your book is one of my favorite I've ever read.
Really?
Really, man. It walloped me in so many ways. You seem like a guy who keeps to himself. Like you seem to kind of like keep a privacy about your life. I don't see you just like spurting stuff out on social media all the time or anything like that. But your book is very vulnerable, almost to the point where like the reading experience feels like voyeuristic, like I'm literally like, peeking behind the curtain. And toward the beginning of your collection reads, my parents, they lived nowhere to go lives, nights without dreams lives. In what decade and where did you grow up? And what was like the social dynamic at the school you attended?
Well, I grew up in North Jersey, like Bergen and Hudson County. And I was born in 1977, so I grew up in the 80s and 90s.
80s kid, yep, 90s, yep.
Yeah. And I went to a Catholic school for quite a few years, even though my family wasn't, my mother's side wasn't religious. My dad's side was Mormon. But I went to Catholic school for some reason. I was told because of the education. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, like a little bit. So did your family and like your at-home life, did it sync up with those of the kids around you? Or did you feel very different?
Yeah, well, no, I felt different because, my parents split up pretty early on. So seeing families that were still together was strange for me. I always thought it was weird. I lived with my mom, so I thought it was weird that a man was in the house, that wasn't like a boyfriend that came and went. That was strange. And the other kids seemed to come from a little bit better economic backgrounds. It was a Catholic school and it did cost money. And, my mom was a single mom. She worked multiple jobs. She always complained about the cost. So it never really made sense why I was going there. I sort of suspected there was some other motives that I didn't understand at the time. Yeah, it was different. It was weird. Not a lot of friends, not until right before I left, I guess. I didn't really have many friends because it was in a much different town. It was like several towns away from where I lived. So I would go to school and see these kids who lived near each other and knew each other. And then I'd go.
And then retire back to your like more solitary existence.
There were kids in my town, but I didn't know them, and I didn't hang out with them. So it was a pretty solitary life.
Yeah. Did you bounce around from friend groups quite often, or do you have a core of people who did stick around?
Later in life, I had some friends. I'm not friends with too many anymore. I was in bands in my teens and 20s, and I keep in touch with guys from one of those bands, and they're like the longest friendship I've had, over 20 years now. Maybe like 25 years. But up until then, no one really consistent. I would have friends for months, and they'd get girlfriends and disappear, and lose girlfriends, reappear.
So it was a changing cast of characters, kind of. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have were there other like immediate family members close to where you grew up?
Yeah, it was a strange environment. I came from like a very dysfunctional, violent family. There was a lot of violence on my dad's side, and that was why my parents broke up. My mom took me and went to live at her mom's house. We wound up living in the attic of that house. But the strange thing is my dad's parents were directly down the street. So yeah, I was around all these people, but it was a very dysfunctional situation, and nobody was really friendly. Not that anyone was necessarily a bad person, but they weren't friendly. Like, I lived upstairs from my grandparents for many, many years, while my mom worked 2 or 3 jobs, and not once was I ever asked down for dinner. So that didn't hit me until maybe like a few years ago.
Damn. Yeah,
that's weird. So
how did you respond like during those years? Did you like kind of just withdraw, or what was your reaction to all of this?
Yeah, I think I didn't know that that's what was happening, but I did withdraw. I was withdrawn. It wasn't like a choice.
Right.
I watched a lot of TV. There were books like Hardy Boys that I read that belonged to probably one of my uncles on my dad's side. But that's really it. Music too. I eventually got into music and would buy cassettes or take the cassettes depending on the money situation. So I got into like aggressive music, a lot of metal,
punk, stuff like that. Yeah. Did you did anyone in your family stand out as like being storytellers? Would you label anyone in that way?
Maybe my I guess so. Actually, yeah. I mean, if you read the book, the Superman story, is a mostly true story that actually did. I was given a live round and told, it was given to him by Superman. I come from a family of construction workers, and it was believable for me that my dad's up on some tall building putting some rivets in, and Superman flies by. And what do it's your dad. You're going to believe him, So yeah, I guess he was a storyteller, definitely. His mom tried to convince me that her dad invented the helicopter, or she didn't. She did convince me because I was a kid. Yeah, I guess that whole side of the family is kind of full of it.
Yeah. Why do you think they do engage in storytelling?
I don't know. They also told me I was related to Ricky Nelson, the singer, which is I have found no proof of this. As a kid, going around telling other kids, hey, I'm related to Ricky Nelson, and they're like, oh.
It makes me wonder like how much that may have like affected you, and like kind of injecting fiction into real life and kind of just like battling with truth and memories and, how much that would make you chase after that stuff later on. Yeah, I would call your poetry domestic poetry. Like spend your last 5 on cigarettes poetry. And wood paneling appears both in poems that take place seemingly in your youth or the protagonist's youth, and in the poems that seem to be more about recent events. So maybe wood paneled walls have been like a constant almost, or a recurring thing. And like what feeling or image does that conjure for you?
Right now, the book kind of just swallows any other previous feeling I had about it. I mean, I think it was just a common design for that time. A lot of people had wood paneling. And honestly, the title, I just put the title on the manuscript just to title it real quick for Bram. I didn't expect to publish a book. I've just been friendly with Bram, and during a DM exchange, he's like, well, why don't you send me something? And, I kind of was like, oh no, like, what do I, so I sent him 3 different things. One of them was notes from a wood paneled basement, which is just everything I had written, I guess, over the past couple of years. I just dumped them into a document and quickly titled it because I was in the basement, the wood panel basement. And maybe I saw a copy of Notes from Underground. Like, I don't know why I did it, but I just picked it real quick, put it on, and sent him the stuff. And he said after, I don't know if it was days or weeks, he was like, yeah, I want to do this Notes from a wood panel basement. And I was like, thing I just threw together? Like, yeah, sure, and he saw something, I guess, that I didn't. So I'm grateful for that. He knows what he's doing. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, me too. So it was just totally like he initiated it by accident, kind of just seeing if you had anything in the closet and you threw it out and that was it.
Yeah.
Very cool. Like it. You like openly and often champion Poe Ballantine. But yeah, I'm wondering, like, when did you actually start writing, and who are other writers that influenced you? Did you teach yourself? Like, when did this become a?
Yeah, I guess I started writing, I guess, 3 years before the pandemic, maybe. I started trying to write children's novels, children's detective novels. I liked reading to my kids. It's one of my favorite things to do. And they liked detective novels or like Goosebumps, anything that has like a cliffhanger at the end of each chapter. So I tried writing that. I wound up writing, I think, six books. One's a ghost story. The 5 others are a series.
And just to entertain your kids.
No, I was going to try and see if anybody wanted it.
Okay.
The detective stories, a lot of them are not good, and they're very tropey. So I thought I could do this. Like, I could make a not great book, and it could be full of tropes, and kids will love it because it's simple. You don't have to you don't have to. Adults are different. They're harder to entertain than a child. Give a child a simple story, some cliffhangers, and they're like, oh, what's going to happen next? So I worked on those. I wrote them really fast and tried to, get an agent, and realized how foolish I was. That was how I learned. That was my introduction into writing, was being a big fool, thinking that this is how it's done. Like, you write a book, you find an agent, and that's it. I knew there was. Yeah. I stopped counting rejections after, I think, 100.
Wow.
Yeah. I submitted to anybody I could find, and nobody wanted anything. It was all, this isn't our thing. So I was like, all right. It tested well with my kids and kids that we know, kids from families that we know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I kind of lost hope in that. I sent Bram one of those, and he liked it and wanted to put it out, but I've kind of lost my steam for that sort of thing.
So you come from like working class parents. Did you go to college?
I did not. Did not go to college.
So when did the detective tropey kids books turn into very serious introspective poetry?
I guess it would probably be around 2019 or 20. Yeah, I think it was through Bram, really, who I met through Poe Valentine. They're sort of connected. So yeah, I asked Bram about, how do you connect with people with, writing and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, you got to get, social media. And I was like, well, I do have it. Like, we're talking on it, but I was just following wrong people. Like, I was following all these agents to to watch these agents to see when they were opening for submissions. So I was like, all right. So I just kind of paid attention to Bram's activity and started checking out places he interacted with, and Back Patio was one of them. So they were probably one of the first ones I got really into reading. I think that's where I might have actually read your stuff.
I don't know. Probable. Yeah. Cabin through both Soft Cartel and Back Patio. He's published a bunch of my shit. Like he's been a very, very gracious editor. Yeah. You've mentioned Bram, and how did you find him? Because he's not necessarily a household name,
Yeah. Well, it was through Poe Valentine because I'd gotten into contact with Poe.
Did you just reach out to him randomly? Like, I love your stuff.
No, he had a new book out and I didn't know how to get it. His old publisher didn't release it. I couldn't find it online, but I knew this book existed. It showed up when I Googled him. It showed up when I clicked the books button, but I couldn't find it anywhere. And I was like, why can't I find this book? So I emailed his old publisher and was like, look, I want to read this. I want to buy this new book, but I can't seem to find it.
Yeah.
And
give it to me.
Yeah. Well, I knew they didn't publish it, but I figured she could maybe tell me where to get it. And she was like, sent me a nice email back and said, I've copied Poe on this. And then me and Poe just kind of started talking back and forth after that. And we still email now to this day, not all the time, but he sends me his books now, which I'm like, this is amazing. This writer I've read for so long.
Idolized almost. Yeah.
Yeah. What's this about?
Yeah.
So, but he's
I don't
cool.
have people sending me shit. That's amazing. No, seriously.
Yeah. So, and he blurbed Goldenrod.
Yeah. God, I love that book so much.
Yeah. That's a funny story too. So yeah, he blurbed Goldenrods, and that's kind of how I learned about Bram. I was like, if Poe blurbed this book, then it must be good.
It's got to be good. Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I started talking to Bram. I DM'd him. It was real creepy too. I didn't know how Twitter really worked yet. Thought you had to limit your characters in the DMs too. So I was broke, so I was like, hey, would you trade one of your books for some music? Or email me for more. I look back.
We can talk without boundaries in email.
Yeah. So.
Oh, I love it. Very cool.
It must have been treated enough to be like, yeah, sure. So.
Yeah. He's
this
such
guy
a good dude. Nice. So there's something else I picked up reading your collection. There's this recurring theme of thin walls, like wishing you couldn't hear something that's going on the other side, or like changing your own behavior so you can't be heard by others. What effect did thin walls have on your life in youth versus as an adult?
Wow. I don't even know if I noticed that about the book. Yeah, just I feel like all apartment situations are thin walls. Am I wrong?
No.
I mean, even now where I am right now, I can hear the neighbor's kid screaming. So
yeah, well, like as another, like you've got a line about taking a piss and making sure the stream of piss hits right above the water level.
Yeah.
Like that's something you only know if you've done it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just curious, like now learning a little bit more about your interesting living situation when you were young too.
Yeah.
I just wondered like how much internal dialogue, I guess, went on surrounding things that you were hearing, but maybe people didn't even know you were noticing.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess growing up in an attic apartment, it was eventually turned into an apartment. I guess you just had to be quiet. My mom, slept on, like in the story, a pull-out couch. So you just heard everything, and I think being alone so much, I think even when I was around people, I felt if I was quiet, I was still sort of alone, I don't know, moving like a ghost or something.
Just observing, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Even now, I kind of walk with a light step, like 200 pounds, but I walk pretty lightly.
Interesting. Kind of leads into another idea I thought might be fun to bounce around. I tweeted once about how to this day I get like a spike in anxiety anytime anybody asks me to go out to a restaurant with them. And it's like now I make enough money where like I can totally afford that luxury from time to time. But like when I was a kid, it was almost like I could keep up the hoax that me and my family were normal until somebody proposed like a movie or going out to dinner or something like that. I'm wondering, do you notice any habits or like anxiety that you developed in youth that are hard to shake, that like they still kind of like hang out on your shoulder and follow you around?
Yeah, money, always worried about money. Even when things were okay, I'd look for the cheap shit to buy. I ate pretty terribly just because I was trying to save money. I actually had a doctor tell me that philosophy is ridiculous. Like I had to eat better. It took him to say that for me to be like, oh my God, you're right. Like,
it's totally worth the money. Yeah.
What am I doing?
But it's ingrained in you, it's like scouring the aisles for whatever the lowest number is.
Yeah.
And
it's the only thing I have a problem with is I would say books. I'll go overboard sometimes and have to take a pretty long break from buying anymore.
Is it harder or do you feel more stress surrounding money now that you have a family?
Well, definitely more. How much of this would end up in the podcast, the whole thing?
As much as you want, man.
Well, one of the thing that's stressing life out for me right now is I'm going through a separation, which is why I'm in an apartment right now. I have a house, but I can't be there all the time. So as far as money goes, it's even worse now because of the apartment. Like it's literally eating up almost everything I make. This isn't my choice. I can't do anything about it. I can't clearly fix it.
Are you doing okay?
Oh no, it's awful. It's terrible. I mean, that's why I guess I needed the routine. Like earlier today, lying on the couch, I'm just like, my life, like my life's like over. Like I thought it was one thing and now it's not. So
yeah, that shit's like all consuming. You only get like a few moments of release where your brain can go like chasing after other thoughts before it just immediately cycles back,
Right. And I guess it's like, I come from a fucked up, broken family, so I don't want to have fucked up, broken family. And
I feel you, dude.
There's nothing I can do. I miss my kids. Like I was stay-at-home parent with them. So this was like brutal to be separated from them for any amount of time. So I'm coming to you like in a pretty dark place.
You're good, man. Like I told you though, like this is, these things are not necessarily about creating or crafting some finished, polished product. It's like just about writing or anything. Like I do this because I like talking to people and connecting, and I don't really do that often in my day to day. And shit, dude, for whatever it's worth, I talked a little bit about this concept in another interview with Dan Eastman. But like, man, growing up, I grew up in a broken home too. And I absolutely like I hated my father. And I kind of like wrapped up some idea that like if I was to succeed, to like break away from the bullshit that I was experiencing and feeling because of how he designed his life. I was like, if I just don't do it like him, I'll do better. Like I'll be doing okay, or I'll be succeeding. And so, man, I've struggled with that shit, especially in relationships when it ends and it's not you're doing and you don't want shit to end. And I can't even imagine what like having a family unit, kids, you know, and sharing that must feel like in the moment. But it doesn't mean you're a failure. Everybody is doing like their best. And neither you nor her started this thing out hoping it would end.
Yeah.
That was my talk with Alan. It got a little bit heavy. And that's okay. That's what we talk to one another for, right? I don't know. If you're like me, you don't get a lot of opportunities, on the regular at least, to talk in a deep way with someone and try to really connect and be there for them. And I found this podcast is my way to do that. And I think naturally, really, the conversations usually go toward the feelings and experiences. And sometimes shit gets real. And I just want to say, like, if anyone out there listening, like, if you're having a hard time, and you don't have someone that you can go to, reach out to me. Like, honestly, I'm more than happy to talk with you, to be there for you. I've been in some pretty low places, and I know what it's like. I know what it feels like, and you always have someone out there who cares that you're here. You can also dial or text 988 24 hours a day. It's the Suicide and Crisis Prevention Hotline. Don't be afraid to reach out. As always, thank you for listening to my podcast. It means the world to me, seriously. Can't thank you all enough. This has been such a fun thing for me. It's just kind of been hit the ground running at the gate, and I don't get to sit and reflect much. I haven't yet. And like, it's amazing the outflow of support I've received from everybody, and the messages, like, seriously, I read all of them. They touch me in a true way. Like, it makes me feel not alone. So thank you all. If you want to support this podcast, you can do several things. You can buy a book from somebody that I interview. You can also become a monetary supporter through Patreon if you so choose. You can start for as low as $1 a month, y'all. Like, if this is worth listening to you in the same manner that buying 1 6-pack of beer over the course of a year is, yeah, you can pledge $1, $12 a year, piece of cake, or you can just keep listening. It'll always be free. Thanks so much, y'all. See you next time.